Welcome everyone to another DesignOps Aligned podcast. I am welcomed by a very special guest by the name of Alejandro Rivas-Micoud, and he is the CEO of Userlytics. And I am very honored that he's come onto the show to discuss about how his company is dealing with the current climate in the market, and looking forward to what he's going to be talking about in this podcast show. Alejandro, do you want to do a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Naresh, and pleased to be here and to join you and your audience. So I am the CEO of Userlytics Corporation. We are a global remote user experience, remote user research, usability testing platform. We have enterprise customers in 41 countries around the world and a global panel of participants of over 2 million. Other than that, not much to say about myself. I've been around the block a few times, entrepreneurship-wise. I've founded and co-founded a number of firms in the U.S., Europe, and Japan, in the telecom, nuclear, and internet spaces. Voila, happy to be on the show.
That's an amazing CV that you have there. So I'm going to delve into that. I'm going to delve into that later. So, and Alejandro, I'm going to go straight into it. I think the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show, and I'm glad that you actually took the initiative to really come on and speak about this, is because a lot of the UX designers nowadays tend to use companies like Userlytics to validate usability or some form of usability testing, or UX researchers tend to go to companies like yourself to help them in their market research. Have you noticed a change in the last year due to the fact that AI has come in?
So it's a great question. The short answer is no, not yet. We implemented an API with OpenAI back in April of last year, so we were pretty quick to start rolling with this new paradigm. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of AI and what our platform does. So, our platform, one of the biggest values it provides is it provides these videos where you actually see your customers, your users, your potential customers, your potential users, as they attempt to do stuff with your user interface. And you get to see, like, oh my God, they're not understanding that button they're looking for is over on the left and they're looking on the right, or they don't understand this or that. So you get to see kind of the folds in the rug where people are tripping as they're crossing the room. And thus it allows you to redesign the rug and everything, and to make things a much nicer experience. Now, the problem is those videos take up a lot of time to analyze them. They're full of rich insights, but it's hours and hours and hours and hours of rich media. So by using AI, we're able to collapse onto minutes and just quickly extract the key themes, the key insights. And so that's a big step forward. There's a number of other, shall we say, low-hanging fruit in terms of AI that we're working on. But I think the big impact to AI has yet to come, and we won't see it until, I don't even think we'll see it next year. I think maybe the following year and thereafter, is what is the impact of AI on the UI?
Yeah.
Yes, as we start incorporating agents and chatbots and things like that, we're starting to change the old paradigm of the UI, where you have a finite set of interactions that the user can navigate through your webpage, through your mobile app, etc. Now, the addition of a chatbot or some kind of agent, all of a sudden, there's an infinite number of things that could happen. What that means in practice, I think, is that enterprises around the world and medium and small companies are going to have to redesign everything to incorporate AI. test, not just from a user acceptance point of view, but from a usability and user experience point of view, all of these new redesigns. So that's going to be kind of a tsunami, if you will, of user experience testing. That is, like I said, I don't see it happening yet, but it's perhaps 15 months, 18 months down the road. We'll start.
The reason why I started with the question of AI, and I know I don't want it to be a podcast solely on like, hey, how AI is affecting kind of market research companies like yourself. But, and would you define your company as a market research company? Was there a better terminology for it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call, what we do is somewhat similar to market research, but it's really not market research. Market research, you might ask people, okay, what do you prefer? Diet Coke or regular Coke? And you get, 30%, 50%, whatever. All right. User experience research, you're asking people, but most of the value is not asking people questions. It's watching them as they're doing stuff. And even if only 10% trip over that fold in the rug as they cross the room, if you fix that fold, the next time the other 9 cross, or 900 or 9,000, whatever, cross the room, they're going to feel, even if just subliminally, wow, they're going to feel better about the experience. Because maybe they were lucky, or maybe they was unconscious that they avoided the fold in the rug the first time around. So completely different how you approach, you're looking at people doing stuff, not asking them questions. And even if you have a small percentage that have an issue, you should fix that because it will benefit everybody else.
Brilliant. It goes back to what I was saying just a second ago. I didn't want to start the podcast off straight in AI, but I think one of the key things I wanted to bring in this podcast and discussion with yourself is that a lot of people are looking into, how to say, AI replacements to do user testing. So, there has been a blow up of what they call synthetic users, or, a website which everyone is now talking about very dramatically on LinkedIn. And I wanted to get your 2 cents on this. A lot of people are going down this route because it's cheaper than what the current market or competitors like yourself are providing to UX designers or general enterprise teams. And I want to get your 2 cents. Do you think these synthetic users are going to change the market and replace the actual real types of users in the end?
It's a great question. So first of all, I think that these kinds of tools can definitely add value to the ecosystem. A. B. I think it's worthwhile. I mean, it may be that the iterations that have come out recently are not yet ready for prime time, and it'll take a few years for them to really add value. I have no idea. But regardless, at a certain point, they will, for sure. And I think it's very useful for either a market researcher or a user experience researcher to use these tools just to see what insights they derive from them. To rely solely on these tools, I think, would be a huge mistake. I mean, we see that all the time when there's a methodology in user experience research that's called heuristic analysis. And what that consists of is, an expert goes to the website or the mobile app and says, you know what, you've got this, this is not following the way traditionally, this is work, the architecture should be different, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that exists already. And yet, and we offer that, by the way, but we also offer, and 99% of the time our clients are using, we actually want to watch real people interacting because there's always more insights that come from that. We may start with the heuristic analysis, but we're going to finish with the user experience research and user testing research. In the same way, I think you might start with using some of these synthetic persona tools. You would end up in the same place that you end up now. I think.
What's your thoughts on how accurate the data is between these synthetic users at the moment compared to real users? Just from your opinion.
I think that from what I've heard and observed, they're impressive, but they're not yet, they're definitely not a substitute right now. They can give you interesting things to start working on. And because, as you said, they're cheap, it's a good way to, let's do that first.
Yes.
Work on that and then continue with the real thing. That's the approach that I would take. It's just like, for example, for many years now, there's a number of tools on the market that, rather than using a real eye tracking mechanism that tracks where your pupils are looking at in the page, they use an algorithm to predict where you would look on the page.
Okay.
Now, yeah, that's kind of cool, but you have to also do the real thing. It's going to miss a lot of stuff. It may give you some interesting insights. It may not. These tools appeared years ago and really have not taken off in a big way, because at the end of the day, it's I guess I would use the analogy of autonomous driving systems. If you get into a car with no steering wheel and it's all autonomous, you don't want the product manager or the designer or the DevOps guy to say, well, don't worry, because 80% of the time it works. Yeah. That's not going to leave you with a good feeling in the stomach. You want it to be, 100%. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with your company, your website, which is your window into the world, your mobile app, which is what everybody interacts with. You don't want to say, well, this tool is good enough. It's going to detect, 10% of the issues. Like, okay, but, this is really important for me. I want to really detect if I have cancer or not. I don't want to say, well, we think but, 50% of the time we're wrong,
Okay. No, that's a good analogy there. And I think like you really hit on the point on the fact that testing with humans and testing with real people, you get that different feeling than generally. I mean, I haven't used any of these AI testing, but you get that feeling how the product really works. And I find that people are not linear, and it's those kind of like edge cases or stuff that we don't think about during the design process that you will only find from real usability testing. So I'm for it. I'm still for the fact that of testing with real people. But I guess the reason why I bring this up is that a lot of businesses are looking down this route due to cost savings. Yeah. As you just mentioned, as you just mentioned in the beginning, UI automation or AI, driven to help with building the UI is coming in thick and fast, where a lot of companies are looking to say, well, if I can have a UI designer or UX designer just execute on my demand, why do I need to pay their salary? And why can't I just have an AI do this? Now, I want to get your take on this. Do you see that the market will change and that let me actually rephrase this in a better way. Do you perceive that more companies are actually going to invest in testing with real people, because now the time is saved from UX designers and UX researchers of doing that kind of manual grunt work of, okay, I can get an AI to test this. I can get the AI to synthesize all my data. And do you see that it's actually going to be changed around, that we're actually going to be more committed into good UX research practices? From your
it's a good question. I think the way I would look at it is as follows. When you invent the car, initially it's very expensive, not something that everybody can afford. As you bring down the price of the car through mass production and other means, it expands the demand for cars, because all of a sudden people who used to walk or use their horse now use a car. So user experience testing, when it used to be something that you could only do in a laboratory, only companies could afford it, right? Then all of a sudden, companies like Userlytics allowed you to do this at scale, anywhere in the world, much cheaper and much faster. Did that eliminate the role of user experience researcher? No. It empowered them. It allowed them to do more tests, because now all of a sudden, the marketer, the market researcher, the product manager, the designer, the developer, who before it's like, yeah, no, we're not going to ask these guys to do a usability test or something because, it'll take 6 months and cost a bunch of money. We'll just guess what the design should be, etc. Now they can say, well, you know what? We can launch a test, and in a few hours or in a day, we can have the results and take it from there. And it's peanuts in terms of price compared to what we could be impacting in terms of our sales, etc. So with AI, I can tell you, I can't tell you how others are using it, but I can tell you that we're pushing for its adoption within our company, not as a means to replace our staff. No, what we want is our staff to be able to be 10 times or 100 times more productive. If that happens universally, it means that our product will become much less expensive, which in turn should foster a huge increase in demand, because a lot of people who could not afford it would now be able to afford it. That's the way I see the impact of all this.
Wow. That's brilliant. The way you just outlined that's really, a lot of people just look at AI as I should say it gets a bad light. People are thinking they're going to lose their jobs left, right, and center. And, but you just painted out a different picture. People are going to upskill. Your company is going to upskill, and then it opens up a better way for, as you say, production or general operations. And so, yeah, I've never seen it from that light. I'm glad you brought that one up. And I'm going to take a different stab at this. I see a lot of companies, and you could just tell me if I'm right or wrong. That's just from my personal opinion. I see a lot of companies utilize research companies like yourself, or how should I say, they utilize UX researchers in a way that I perceive does not bring value. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of product managers would use companies like yourself to validate ideas rather than education or illumination on what can be enhanced. Now, what's your take?
Yeah, it's a great question. Recently, there's this new movement that has emerged in our field that's called continuous discovery. Because what you're talking about, which is a great topic, is the difference between validating something, like, okay, we've gone through the whole design and development phase, and before we actually release it, let's do a last sanity check and see if, everything went well. To, very early stage exploratory research where I just want to see maybe there's an untapped need of my target persona that I'm not realizing. Maybe there's something that they would enjoy doing that I had no idea, that putting together a phone with a music player, with a photo, a camera, and calling it one single device would just make it so much more useful. Maybe I'm not seeing that. So I want to do exploratory design. So what is continuous discovery? Continuous discovery is a movement whereby every week, or if you like, every 2 weeks, you have certain key people like, product managers, maybe the marketing manager, maybe the market researcher, certain developers, designers, just interview one, maybe two of their target personas and just, ask them, not ask them questions as, do you think this, would you like this? Because that's more market research. But, it's like, show me what are the things that you would like to do or that you do in your day life today. And, so that I can understand your life in the sense of, the professional perhaps, or the consumer, if it's a consumer thing, but, and see if that generates ideas and insights me to, so it's an exploratory research rather than, a validation research. Both are important,
Yes.
but they're completely different in how you approach them and everything else.
Absolutely. I think, you definitely need a validation, but I am seeing a lot of companies not invested in that, as you say, discovery or that, that continuous discovery. And is that something that Userlytics promotes to businesses?
Yes. We have a continuous discovery product. And we're actually having a webinar on the topic here in about, 2 or 3 weeks with the author of the book that, kind of made it into a very popular subject and theme right now, as well as one of our clients who uses it in their enterprise. So yeah, we're very much pushing for this because for us, when user experience research was expensive, it could only be done once every, 3 months, every 6 months, something like that, right? So I like to think of it as a world. Imagine a world in which the toothbrush does not exist. How would you take care of your teeth? Well, you'd go through life and then all of a sudden your teeth hurt and then you go to the dentist.
Yes.
And that was the world before Userlytics came on the scene, when we were just, we had, in-person usability labs and, things like that. We made it easy to brush your teeth, in this case, once a week, like do a sanity check of your website, et cetera, once a week. Now, you have to educate people, because if you've grown up and your parents told you from the time you were 3 or 4 years old, hey, you got to brush your teeth every day, you've got it ingrained into your habits. But if you grew up in a world without any toothbrush, it would take a while before you, adopted it. So, our role is to push for that. So anyway, continuous discovery is something that fits very much within our ethos of test often, test iteratively, and you can do small sample sets. You can do large sample sets with validation at the very end, but throughout the exploratory phase, small sample sets, but doing it frequently. That's the key.
Nice.
Enjoying the content? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram for more updates. Your support helps us bring you even more great content. Now let's get back to our podcast.
I'm going to take a different direction with this question. With the rise of the laws coming in for WCAG, there's a massive explosion now to validate, not validate, but test with users with some form of disability. Is that the best word to use it, or accessibility issues?
Yeah. Either one, I think, would be correct. Yeah.
I would like to get your 2 cents on this and how Userlytics is dealing with that kind of requests that are coming in from many, many different angles.
Yeah. So WCAG, as you know, there's a number of different standards.
Yeah.
And the most advanced, or the highest level, if you will, is 2.2.
Yeah.
And in the European Union, they recently passed certain requirements that oblige certain types of entities to implement these guidelines. In the US, also, there's certain requirements. The difference in the US and Europe is that in the US, frequently changes driven by lawsuits Whereas in Europe, it's frequently driven by top down, you have to do it or we'll fine you. But it doesn't matter. In either case, this is already happening both sides of the Atlantic and, around the world. It's super important. It's super ethical too. We don't want to live in a world where only certain people can access all of the benefits of the digital realm. So, there's a thing called voluntary product assessment, VPAT, whereby companies, go through each one of the elements of WCAG and say, yes, I meet this partially. I'm going to meet this. It's on my roadmap for, Q3, et cetera, et cetera. So we're continually updating our VPAT and working towards, full 2.2 achievement. And we're well on our way. We're not 100% there, but we're well on our way to achieving that. And we also hope to help enterprises test for accessibility.
Yeah. I was just about to say that because 2.2 is very, very hard. I mean, even I live in Switzerland. I think our level is 2.1 or 2.0. I'm going to double check about that. But generally, even to reach 2.2 is a very, very hard graph, and there's a lot of design. Yeah, there's a lot of design principles that you need to embed into your designers to make sure they're catered to that. Now, you just mentioned that you help companies. Is that something that, in the sense that you go to companies, and I know a company off the top of my head, and I'll check with marketing if I'm allowed to say it. They'll probably bleep it out if I'm allowed to say it. But there's a company called Level Access who come in and they come and check your site and they check what standards you are at, and also what things you need to do in order to reach a certain standard. Is that something that Userlytics also do?
We don't do exactly that because that's more similar to a heuristic analysis, if you will, but from the accessibility standpoint. So that's an expert review. Somebody comes in and says, yeah, you meet this, you don't meet this, that kind of thing. What we have done with some clients, and we're just at the starting gate here. We just started to do this and we're still kind of testing the waters. But what we're doing is accessibility testing. So in other words, getting participants who have accessibility issues, who have certain disabilities, asking them to interact with a particular UI that has been designed, hopefully with accessibility in mind, and then pinpointing certain issues that, irrespective of the guidelines of WCAG 2.2, because at the end of the day, that's just certain rules. But what you want to do is that when accessibility person A interacts with asset B, that they're able to without too much of a heartache. And that's where, our tests can help.
Alejandro, I think from our market research, the people who listen to this podcast, we have a lot of directors in certain companies where there's a certain restriction on incentives that you can give test subjects or people who are helping you with testing. Strict law in Switzerland, you can't give any incentives at all. And a lot of companies are struggling to use companies like yourself due to this incentive law restriction. I don't know how harsh it is in America, but generally in Europe, there's you can't even give like a voucher by law. Now, how have you come across something like this working with certain partners, and how have you kind of fixed it from a user like it?
No, we haven't come across that. I mean, the incentives that we provide are very small in relation to, it's not like, there are exceptions. If you ask for, I would like neurologist surgeon to participate in tests, we're going to have to pay them a certain amount of money for their time, because their time is worth money, and all of our time is worth money. So, the amounts of money that we're paying are relatively small in general, unless it's a very specific, difficult persona. We haven't run into that issue, and we've done projects in 79 countries around the world. Now, it may be that for user experience and market research have certain differences there. Now we're doing user experience, so I'm pretty sure that the makers of World of Warcraft, if they want to invite 20 teenagers into a room in Geneva and pay them, spend a few hours playing World of Warcraft, I don't think the Swiss government is going to have any problem with that at all.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I have difficulty believing that.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I live in the banking capital of the world. And that's why I brought up that subject. Because a lot of restrictions are there generally on designers that work with banks. But yeah, I'm glad that you're not having that issue. I think it's something, a lot of people who message me, who kind of got in contact with me, and especially with DesignOps Aligned, I'm going to do some product placement now, Alejandro. So the people who've got in touch with DesignOps Aligned and my business partners, they have asked us to kind of sort out this issue. And we've kind of looked into laws about this and other companies to help us with this. Because we've come in and helped them with their testing. We should have went to Userlytics. Should speak to them about that. But generally, that's something that we try and offer them. And Andrew, I want to talk about quality, because I think one of the key things that companies look at when they use a company like yourself is the quality of the test subjects. Now, quality always comes down to how close are you matching the persona base that they have for their product, and how close can you get to these kind of persona requirements from your perspective?
Right. It's a great question. And so first of all, traditional market research, when it's quantitative, it's more difficult to weed out fraud, as in fraudulent testers, as in testers who may not even be human because they're synthetic personas, but not in a good way, but in a bad way, because they're just fake people, bots pretending to be humans. It's difficult in a quantitative survey to weed that out. Now, we've invested a lot of time to do so and a lot of resources, and I can't mention what the tools are that we use, but we use, different, very different ways of limiting that. When it's a qualitative thing where we're recording the participant, etc., it's easier to weed out because we have a QA process where somebody reviews the session. And, when they look at the video, wait a second, there's something here that doesn't quite, so that helps a lot, but we also use our other tools to weed out, people who pretend to be something and they're not. And here's the thing. If you're a client and you want a very fast response from a very articulate person, you could use a service that provides essentially a professional or semi-professional tester who's very articulate, looks good on camera, and, because they're doing this all day long for that company, the turnaround time is very fast. Or you could adopt the approach, no, when the company says they want users of accounting software in enterprises that are at least this size, we're going to find them those people. We're not going to have made up testers pretending to be that. So, we put in controls to make it difficult for that to happen. That's our approach. But I have to say that, for some situations and some clients, they may prefer having a very articulate and, good looking person, on the reel, so to speak.
Okay.
So, it depends.
Well, then it comes down to, say I'm a client and I get a whole bunch of testers for myself or test subjects, and I'm not happy with kind of two of them because I just feel they weren't matching. What does Userlytics do about that?
Sure. So first of all, we have a client rating system. So any session that is rated a 1-star, the lowest, automatically is replaced unless we see that, because there are situations where a client might have tested a prototype that is faulty. And because it was faulty, the participant was not able to go past a certain point. And so then the client says, oh, well, this is no good. I'm 1-starring it. Yeah, but hang on a second. That's not the tester's fault. That's on you.
Yeah.
But so we do review, but in general, they're replaced. And even if they're not rated 1-star, but the client, reaches out to us and say, hey, I was kind of, I didn't really like this result because of A, B, or C. Same thing applies.
Okay. That's really good. I think a lot of, and I've just experienced that myself. I think when I've had test subjects and when I've done usability testing, if, I didn't bring my opinion to it, it's more the fact that these companies, I'm not going to name these companies that we have used in the past, had said exactly the same thing, that, we have given you the right subject, we're not going to replace it. And I think, that's just a bad customer experience, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I mean, like I said, there are certain situations, and maybe 5% of the time or even 2% of the time where, it was not the participant's fault. It was not on Userlytics. It was on the client. But even in those situations, frequently we'll, say, tell you what, we'll replace them anyway. Unless, if it's like they asked us to get Jeff Bezos on the line,
Yeah.
Making it so we may not be able to repeat that.
Alejandro, I want to take a different direction. There's many companies like yourself out there. And I want to get your 2 cents on what makes Userlytics different to the competitors out there. Now, we don't need to put any names in general, but what makes you stand out compared to your competitors?
Sure. So within our field, there are some entities that are, they just do a certain type of methodology. They just do card sorting and tree testing, for example, or they just do panel recruitment, or they just do this or that. We're one of the few ones that are holistic. You can do every type of UX research methodology, mixed methods. You can mix them up and, do all kinds of things. Now, there are a few others who also do that, like ours. And vis-a-vis those, where we are different is, on the one hand, customer service. Our G2 ratings and other ratings, App Store, Google Play, etc., show that there's something that we do. I mean, it's a soft thing, but it's not a hard thing, but there's something that we do that customers appreciate, whether it's responsiveness, whether it's flexibility, whether it's, speed in response, whether it's just smiling. I don't know. But they like us. And so I think that's one area. Second one is we have the largest international footprint. So, if a client wants to do a complex study involving participants in Brazil, Mexico, Kazakhstan, Lebanon, Kenya, Germany, and the UK, we can do it. There's not many providers who can say that. Thirdly, we're combining both access to a panel, and a very large one at that, over 2 million, with a software platform. Not everybody can say that. And then finally, the last one, which I think is also quite important, is that our competition in terms of pricing model has adopted a seat account-based pricing model. So if you want 10 users within your organization, you pay for each seat. If you want 100, you pay for each seat. So the more users, the more you pay. That's what our competition does. In our case, there's no added cost, no matter how many users or seats or accounts you have. It doesn't matter whether they're admin accounts, test creation, viewers, doesn't matter what the type of account. You can have as many as you like. We just charge you based on usage. So if you're not using it or you're using it less, we're going to charge you accordingly. And if you use it a lot, that probably means that you're getting a lot of value out of it. So you should pay more. So it's, in our view, a more fair, but especially it allows you to expand within the organization, those benefiting from the service. And that's our goal.
Wow. That's like a pay-as-you-go subscription model. So you pay as you use it kind of thing.
Sort of. I mean, they are annual contracts and you do purchase, like these credits up front, and you get big discounts if you purchase in bulk. So it's not exactly that, but it's like you can have 10 users, 100, 1,000, 10,000. It's not going to change your costs. It's just the amount of credits that you use. Period.
Okay.
And you can use the credits as a currency. I can do unmoderated tests, moderated tests, quantitative tests, card sorting, free testing, diary studies, continuous discovery, focus groups, all kinds of things.
Wow. Amazing platform.
Thank you.
I want to finalize with one question. And I think this is something that I kind of notice researchers struggle with in general. They struggle in building good repositories. So, you always have a research team that builds that repository of all data they've collected, all research they've done, and, video recordings and et cetera, et cetera. Well, let me get your question. Take this question. Does Userlytics help in building a good repository or building a good structure for a UX repository?
Yes, we do, but I'll add the caveat that there's a lot more we would like to do in that area that we are not doing yet. So we are actually in the process right now of refactoring and redesigning our entire system for manipulating and sharing and leveraging and taking advantage of all the data, whether that's video data or quantitative data or what have you. And we do, like right now, sometimes clients come to us and say, hey, I've got all these Zoom interviews that I did with something else, other platform. Can we upload them to your platform so we can leverage your tool set? And yeah, we allow that. But there's a lot more that we could do and that we plan to do in that direction. So we're not 100% where we would like to be yet in that area.
Oh, okay. I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we help research ops in getting a good structure. I guess there is no clear guidance from. Well, I don't actually take that back. There is a big growing in research ops. It's starting to pick up, but there hasn't been a concrete definition on how a good research repository should be. So that's something I'll definitely tag in about later on.
I think that AI is going to be a driver for pushing that to happen, because AI will be able to, in theory, attack a repository and extract insights from multiple studies on perhaps unrelated subjects and come up with patterns that were just not obvious at first glance. So, the advent of AI is going to be a driver, I think, to, it'd be nice to have a repository to begin with so that AI could do that function.
Brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to how the future is going to turn out with how researchers come in. I think, like you mentioned, I personally believe researchers in general are going to benefit from the AI boom. I don't think people in the market should be worried that their jobs are going to be gone. I really think, as you mentioned, it's going to enhance their job.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, the future. We'll have to ask ChatGPT what the future holds. Only he knows. But I think I agree with you.
Absolutely. Well, Alejandro, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. And thank you so much to coming on the show. It's been enlightening what Userlytics does. I think, we hear so much about your company. Everyone knows your company is globally known, but to take the time to speak to us, we really appreciate it. So,
Naresh, thank you so much for inviting me. And it was a pleasure to chat with you.
brilliant.
Take care.
Thanks. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bang. How did you think that went?